Look no further than Syndrome from The Incredibles to serve as an example of why you're better off never meeting your heroes. Now, that's not to say that the hero that's being idolized might be absolute trash, but rather that the fan might have a villain origin story waiting for them right down the street. The worst thing a hero might go up against aren't the villains they face out of the gate when they first arrive on the scene. It's the villains they might create. God forbid you don't realize and praise a super fan or super supporter, or they're a little mean to them, or bend to their every favor and whim, or validate their feelings because the next thing you know, 15 years later, that fan might make it their business in ruining their life. Hell, even before we get to that part, why the hell did Buddy hop into Mr. Incredible's car like that? The kid didn't even bother to say hello to Mr. Incredible. Instead, he just spawned right next to him. Like, really? You're just gonna go into my car without my permission? And he didn't even say hello. He said nothing to the effect of, "Hey, Mr. Incredible, what's up? How's your day been going on, huh?" Nope. Just slid through the passenger's window and acted like that shit was normal, and expected Mr. Incredible to be cool with it. Alright, from this point on, I'm calling Mr. Incredible Bob. That's what his wife called him, so that's what I'ma call him. This is exactly the type of shit that would have gotten my ass beaten as a kid, bothering adults. And that's not even including the whole talking to strangers part and getting into their car. Buddy willingly hopped into Bob's car, and Bob didn't even need to offer him any candy. Lucky he didn't end up on the 10 o'clock news.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Anyway, I'm an honest guy. Usually. Let me tell you right now that I couldn't be Bob because someone like a Buddy would terrify the shit out of me. If I saw what the inside of Buddy's room had looked like, with all the toys of me, posters, news articles, and last summer's chewing gum that was preserved in a special case, I'd feel extremely creeped out. Obviously, there is nothing wrong with being a fan and supporting someone, but when it gets close to bordering obsession, that's where it can get a bit uncomfortable. At that point, it's unhealthy. Now, I do agree that kids sometimes have this phase, but Syndrome specifically never got out of it. It's people like Buddy here that are the worst part about fandoms. Don't matter how dope a fanbase might be, there's always a Buddy lurking in some remote corner, messing shit up and giving everyone else in that fanbase a bad rep. Never be a Buddy. Seriously, you can appreciate someone's greatness from a safe distance. To think that your influence can possibly mold someone into a Buddy is scary to me. Personally, I wouldn't want that kind of power outside of my household, but I digress. And before someone misinterprets what I'm saying, I'm only talking about my hypothetical children. Yeah, can't let that line get misinterpreted. Everything that I've said to the side, Syndrome is even better now than how I originally remembered him. But bear with me for a bit. What I just said about fans being the worst part isn't 100% fair. The crazy minority of fans isn't a reflection of the whole. But God, that tiny vocal and extreme minority have the power to give the fan base a dirty image. The thing that Buddy didn't realize from the beginning, understandably so, he was a child, is that there is a boundary that is supposed to be respected. A line that separates the fans from the celebrity, hero, influencer, or whatever else known figure that has garnered a fan base. Generally, when these characters turn into villains, they never grow up to see the error in their train of thought. Buddy had 15 years to stop and be like, you know what, maybe I should just stick with selling these inventions and go on and keep building a business, and not act and dwell on my past hate and insecurities, and move on with my life. But where would we as the audience have any fun in that? There's something pretty ironic about how someone who used to love and idolize a person becoming one of their biggest haters. It's almost like a relationship that ends in a train wreck. Because you once loved them so much, it makes the hate and anger towards them even stronger. It intensifies because of all of that hurt. That love and admiration a superfan once had that turned into hatred and a deep-seated desire to see their idol fail, in my opinion, makes for a good character. And in this case, a pretty good villain. Yeah, despite Syndrome's failure and L's he caught towards the end of the movie, that doesn't take away from his character. Speaking of L's, how the hell did Syndrome not account for his creation quickly adapting to him? Did he not bother reprogramming it? How the hell did you have time for all of this preparation and then at the end you fumble this hard? Did he not consult with his team? Did he just do all of this by himself? So ultimately, his arrogance and his overestimation of himself was his downfall. Okay, I got you. The dynamic of a mega fan or supporter having this newfound hatred for their idol and drive to outdo their former idol by one-upping them because of their anger and jealousy is a petty human thing. That shit right there is real. I know Syndrome might not show it with his big ass face that's shaped like the Hulk's big toe, but he is still hurt and insecure, like the big ass man-child that he is. Like when you look at when he blew Helen and the kids out of the sky and he jabs at Bob, telling him how he'll be alright because he prefers to work alone. The same line that Bob told Syndrome as a kid because he didn't need his help. That right there is some bitter and petty ass shit. And I love it. How many times have you heard success stories of people saying how a teacher or one of their own family members would tell them that they'd fail or wouldn't be good enough, only for that person to rise above the doubt and become the opposite of what everyone had expected of them? That drive to prove people wrong is real. While I don't think it's the best, it's still a motivator. In the case of Syndrome, it was a bit more than that. In reality, success in itself is the flex. People don't usually pop back up to their old high schools and shit on the teachers that doubted them. Syndrome, on the other hand, is special. Syndrome had to go fishing for his old idol. He pretty much built his idol back up, giving Bob a drive to get back in shape and feel like the best version of himself. And also Syndrome could end him. Again, that's some pretty sick and twisted shit right there, but I love it. Syndrome could have enjoyed being rich with making his tech, but that wasn't good enough for him. He needed to make a statement. It's interesting how Bob's rejection of Syndrome morphed Syndrome and drove him past the point of a scorned mega fan who was seeking revenge, and how he instead went straight into a whole-ass villain who went on some murking hero streak. The path one can go on as a result of rejection from the sole one person that they held in such high regard can be quite... The only bail that I'm willing to shoot Syndrome is that he was already having Soups killed and he would eventually have to deal with Bob, because by this point in his life, his villainy was dialed all the way up. Till this very day, I appreciate Syndrome's train of thought, with him being the sole superhero and then eventually making everyone super so that super would become the norm and thus rendering everyone normal. I love how he states that he'd sell his inventions to make others super only after he had his own fun. Spoken like a true child who can't stand to share the spotlight with anyone else. Damn, I'm not gonna lie, man really had a rough 15 years based off of his hairline. God, how old was he before the time skip? Like 10 years old? Jeesh. Oh shit. I just realized that he had blonde hair as a kid. Probably dyed it to look more like Mr. Incredible. Either that or his hair just naturally got red over time. Going back to the whole when everyone is super, no one will be. Syndrome is human. He definitely remembered that joy that he felt as a kid. That fascination of watching Mr. Incredible do his job and doing it well. I appreciate how this movie dealt with the whole superhero thing and how they sometimes cause a lot of damage and sometimes even some big ass accidents, and the government had to pretty much outlaw superheroes, as we see with supers having to go into hiding. You know, not everyone was on board with that idea. Some people would have still appreciated the superhero services. But then you have someone like Syndrome wanting to rob people of that sparkle that came along with supers. He wanted to besmudge the shine with what came along being a superhero, stripping away something that was exceptional, and decided to make it mundane, and all with him knowing that he was the direct cause of it so that he could prove to himself that Bob was wrong, and how he didn't need powers like his idol to be super. This was more than just getting revenge on his idol by this point. Bob was nothing more than a checkbox in Syndrome's bucket list. I did find it funny how even when it's revealed that Bob survived the explosion after their first face-off, Syndrome wasn't even salty. In fact, he respected it. After all, he was his biggest fan. For a moment, you sorta get to see Syndrome like he's a kid again, fanboying over his idol. Hell, I'll even take it a step further. At first, it seems like Syndrome is set on killing Bob. Just look at his smug-ass big toe-shaped face when his drone returns and tells him that Bob is dead. Yet after Syndrome questions him about the flight that was approaching the island, he still ends up keeping Bob alive. Why? Why the change of heart? Even later on when he captures the whole family, Syndrome lets them live. The man did not really want to kill Bob. He didn't. He still had some love for the big man that he looked up to. I don't care what anyone says. Usually, I call out these instances of villains keeping the hero alive just so that the hero could thwart their plans later on for the sake of the story, but no, not this time. Syndrome did not want Bob to be dead. No one's gonna change my mind on that. That smug ass face when his drone tells him that he's dead. He tried to lie to himself right there. He didn't want Bob dead, y'all. Come on. But quite possibly my favorite part of Syndrome's character was him finding and going to Bob's home to kidnap Jack so that he could raise him up as his own sidekick, as a big fuck you to Bob. Yes, this is another case of a villain doing too much. But I'm rolling with Syndrome only because this doesn't seem out of his character. Yes, that man is petty enough to pull some shit like that. After all, he was pretty dead set on proving Bob wrong, and why he shouldn't have casted him aside. Syndrome taking Bob's son and being a better mentor to Jack than Bob was to him would be a pretty good fuck you if Syndrome were to have his way. If this movie taught me nothing else besides how it's not always the best to use hate as motivation, it's that it's never safe to wear a cape outdoors, especially if you're involving yourself in a lot of fuckery. Just a bit of extra content here because this really is my favorite Pixar film. Really, I had this movie short-circuiting my DVD player as a kid. Okay, how does Helen's organs work? How does anyone's organs work who have stretchy powers like this? We're all just supposed to assume that her organs also stretch and that they're able to change their shape as well? I don't know about the rest of you guys, but a flattened heart sounds scary as hell to me. I don't care if your powers allow you to twist, flatten, and contort your body. But yes, suspend your disbelief, I know. Also, Helen is pretty damn strong, man. Picking up a steel manhole cover, which can run anywhere from like 90 pounds to 150, sometimes even more than that, is not some light feat. If you've done weightlifting, even a lighter weight feels heavy when you lift it away from your body. Like if you did a lateral or a front delt raise, the further the weight gets away from your body, the heavier and more tension you feel. And Helen lifted that 90-pound manhole and slingshot that shit with little struggle. You know, usually I play into the whole horn dog business because Helen got that top tier Pixar mom design, but I know that that's been done to death already. We all have eyes. However, I must say that this right here really puts into perspective how deadly her build is. Her hips alone should be registered as a weapon. Yes, her lower half being retracted at a speed which it was is powerful by itself. But the fact that she was able to knock out two grown-ass men, and all because the size of her hips were able to gobble them up, which should really show you just how thick she is. Also, being older and understanding how Helen might have felt putting all the context clues together and suspecting that Bob was cheating on her is pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie though, catching a flight just to catch him and confront him is a bit much. And this right here is why you can't cheat on superheroes. Seriously, like imagine cheating on Wonder Woman. The next thing you know, the woman whose back you were blowing out is dead, split in half. They don't play around. Love can make you do some really stupid shit. You don't even want to find out how far they're willing to go. You're jeopardizing normal ass people. So if you're gonna cheat on someone who's super, the person that you're cheating with has to also be super, just so that they can protect themselves. Those should be the rules. One last thing before I end this video, I really rock with Bob. You know how the good guys in movies and shows usually knock out the bad guys, and despite whatever brutal takedown that they use, the bad guys are still alive and breathing because the good guys aren't supposed to kill. Bob is not on that type of timing though. He's straight up killing people in this movie. Don't let the pretty explosions cover up that fact, okay? But what's funnier is that Dash even caught more bodies than his father in this movie. Indirectly, sure, but he was still the cause of what, 3 of Syndrome's men blowing up? Yeah, that's how you do it. That's how you deal with them. The bad guys aren't always gonna faint. Sometimes they're just gonna straight up die, intentionally or not. I love how Dash doesn't even reflect on the destruction that he caused. Those human lives mean nothing to him. And Bob doesn't even take any time to explain that sometimes you gotta kill the bad guy. He just straight up show his children how you gotta do it sometimes. Hell, it's like Violet and Dash already understood. And if that's the case, that's some good parenting. Oh man, don't take me too seriously, man.
Ding, ding.